There are certain factors which affects photosynthesis. We are giving them the 5 components: sunlight, chloroplast, carbon dioxide, water, nutrients, everything we are giving. But there are certain factors which affects. Now, light intensity. How much of light are you giving? Less light, optimum light, lot of light. So the photosynthesis will depend on this. Everything works best in optimum temperature. There are certain plants which require 8 hours of sunlight. Only then the flowers, plant, fruits, everything will happen. There are certain plants which just require half an hour of sunlight in a day and they're good to go. Right? So light intensity is one of the important factors. You may all write it down. These are important points. Now, availability of carbon dioxide. There could be you could place an indoor plant inside a room which is closed. For maybe a week, carbon dioxide would not be available that freely. You have kept it next to a window. It has got everything, sunlight, everything, but it is not getting enough carbon dioxide. That could be a problem. And an extreme condition could be you're keeping it in a place which has got lots of carbon dioxide, excess of carbon dioxide. Right? So availability of carbon dioxide is a factor affecting photosynthesis. Temperature. Plants grow best at this temperature. 20 degree to 35 degrees is what temperature is required for most of the plants to grow. Anything above it, just imagine if it is 40, 42 degrees Celsius. It's like desert. Do you have many plants growing in deserts? No. Optimum, Unmana means na zyada na kam. Optimum, just right, perfect, exact, just right. Okay, now if it's 20 to 35 degrees Celsius, this is an optimum temperature. Matlab, this is a temperature that plants need to grow the best. If the temperature is too high, then the growth will not happen well. And all plants can't grow in desert or too much of heat. Vis-a-vis, if the temperature is less, for example 10 degree, 5 degree, very hilly area, too much of snowfall, there also plant growth does not happen much. There are only few plants, pine and a few other plants, fir and all, which will grow good in those low temperature areas. So temperature plays a critical role for photosynthesis. Photosynthesis occurs best in this temperature. Now, availability of water. We know, we have discussed about availability of water. Less water is also not good. Excess water is also not good. It just requires optimum water. What happens, Karthik? What happens when there is excess water given to the plant? आपने एक पौधे को, प्लांट को सुबह भी वाटरिंग किया, आफ्टरनून को भी वाटरिंग किया, इवनिंग को भी वाटरिंग किया, आपने एक्सेस वाटरिंग कर लिया. Karthik, tell me, answer, what will happen to the plant if you do excess watering?
Ma'am, it will get its stem will get thicker.
Is rotten? Correct. It will get rotten. First and foremost, the roots will get rotten. It does not require so much of water. There will be too much of water. It will cause a lot of humidity. Humidity will lead to rottenness. So too much of watering is also not good. Right? Okay. Now, inorganic mineral ions. What are these inorganic mineral ions? Like we had discussed, calcium, nitrogen, zinc, phosphorus, magnesium, all these things. They need it in optimum amount. I'll just give you an example. For example, if there are legumes, pulses, peanut, they need a lot of nitrogen in the soil because, to produce anything that produces protein-rich stuff, like legumes are very rich in protein, soybean is rich in protein, they need a lot of nitrogen fertilizers in the soil. What if you give them zinc fertilizer, iron fertilizer? You're giving all the fertilizers and you're telling, मैंने अपने plant को इतना fertilizer दिया, but still my plant is not growing. Why? Because that particular plant needs nitrogen and does not require other minerals. Similarly, yes, Priscilla, nitrogen, it requires nitrogen. For example, flowering plants need a lot of magnesium and phosphorus. You get specialized fertilizers, you get specific fertilizers for fruits so that your plants can have more fruits. You have specific fertilizers so that your plants can have more flowers. So every plant will have different kinds of mineral requirement. You cannot give every mineral to every plant. Yes, they will not be able to complete the photosynthesis, Ulmana, because the nutrient requirement will not match. See, these are the inorganic mineral ions. See, this we have already studied. If we take out water from plants, it will dehydrate it. What is the meaning of dehydrate? It will just dry out the plant. The plant will become flaccid, droop, and then just die. So if you dehydrate the plant, it is only left with carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. So 96% of the plant consists of these four inorganic mineral ions: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Remaining 4% has zinc, calcium, iron, molybdenum, phosphorus, boron, etc. So can you imagine if you dry a plant, if you take out, extract all the water, maybe you put it in a dehydrating system and then take out all the water from it, the plant will be left with a lot of mineral ions, right? It will be left with 96% of these four, and it will be left with 4% of several other trace elements. These are known as trace elements because they are required in very little amount. Correct? Now, all are absorbed from soil. Plants though did not have all this when it was growing. So from where did it go? It got all from the soil. So your soil has to be so rich. The soil has to be so rich that it can actually keep a plant going till it grows 40 years. So much of fertilizers and manures you have to add to your soil. So what are macronutrients and what are micronutrients? Macronutrients are nutrients which are required in very high amount. Right? You require them in high amount. Like, you really need it in a few grams per month.
And can it be fats?
Karthik, I did not get your question.
Then can it be fats?
No,
Plants.
No, Karthik. We have not mentioned fats anywhere. Plants do not need fats. They cannot absorb fats. Fat is not, soluble in water, so it cannot take in fats. Fats can only be converted to lipids and glycerol and fatty acids. So, fats cannot be absorbed by plants. Yes, Priscilla, fats are only found in animals and humans. Only we require it. They don't need. So micronutrients is required in less amount. Macronutrients is required in high amounts. Correct. Now, these are a few macronutrients. Yes, Karthik.
Ma'am, but some of the plants provide us fats. Ma'am, what about that?
They provide us fat. You're very intelligent question, Karthik. For example, if you take dry fruits, if you take peanuts, they do have fats. You're right. But that doesn't mean that they have taken fats. That's why they are producing fats. Not necessarily. They need a lot of these carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Through carbon, hydrogen, oxygen only they can make fat. Right? See, almond, walnut. You all eat almond and walnut during the winter season. It has a lot of fat. It is very good for our brain. But plants, just imagine, you are putting oil, you're putting ghee and butter to the plant. Will that ever work? Plant will die.
Okay,
Plants, soil, they cannot absorb fat. Correct? So what happens is that they make fat out of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, the macronutrients that you provide. Right? So micronutrients are copper, zinc, boron, manganese, and molybdenum. These are required in very little amount. As I said, trace elements.
Ma'am, chlorine is also required in micronutrients.
Yes, chlorine is also required. Chloride is also required in micronutrients, but very little. Too much of chloride or too much of chlorine could lead to toxicity, or the plants might not grow